You're so funny. Are you a crazy cat person like me that wants to travel the country with your little fur baby? Well, today I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks on how we did it in this little tiny camper for an entire year and just go over some things that worked and some things that didn't. I also have to point out my little guy's special spot on his back. If you can see it, let me know in the comments below. But he is my 2020 cat. And he is definitely a character, and I'm so grateful to have had him for all this time on the road while we traveled. But I just wanted to give you guys a few ways that helped us, and maybe it'll help you if you're thinking about traveling with your cat. When Rupert and I first met, he was a little street cat and he chased me down the road. I did not want another cat. I had been catless for 3 years. I was just enjoying having my senior dog, and that little turd chased me down and made me his mother. And I was like, how am I going to travel with a cat? So now I have this little cat, and I've got to figure out, okay, how are we going to make this work? Because I still want to live this life and still have all my traveling capabilities and everything else. So we figured out a plan. I love the thing so freaking much. I'm glad he did because I was not considering myself a cat person, but now I am that crazy cat person that made fun of my neighbor in 2009 for walking his cat. Now look at me. Karma will get you guys. Don't make fun of people who walk their cats because you never know, you might be one of them. Things that help. Harness training is a must. We spent a lot of time on the road with Rupert in his harness. So that's basically what he was on every day while we were out. And that way he could get out and explore around the camper and stay close to me. I found a few things that worked for us. But anyway, so there's the basic little H harness. So this part just goes around his neck, this part stays on his back, and that clips around his middle section. So that worked really well. I would switch him out to this harness, which is a little bit more hefty, but he can actually get out of this harness a little bit easier. So this is the back of it. This clips around, this is the front of the chest, and it just clips around underneath. And I'll show you both of those, but he hates putting this one on because it has to slip over his head. So he hates that part. So we didn't wear this one very frequently because every now and then I'd look over and he'd be out of his harness, and I'm like, and it was only when he was wearing this one. He never slipped out of this one completely. So this one was a little bit more secure. However, it wasn't as comfortable around his waist area for long-term use. So we switched it up just a little bit to keep him from having the same places that were rubbed or irritated, and because he spent so much time in it. So I think the main ingredient for harness training your cat is patience. I initially put it on him. He was not happy.
This was his first harness encounter, and he looks thrilled.
And eventually, after letting him wear it around the house a little bit, then we'd take little trips outside. He saw the benefit of wearing it was his reward was to get to go outside. And so then he started begging for walks at the house. And it took me about a year and a half to get him road ready. I didn't just get a cat and jump on the road and go travel. It took a little time and patience to get him acclimated and to get him comfortable. And so I've got all the things when I first started to try and make this trip as comfortable as possible for him and gave up a lot of my own comforts for the cat. But if you have a cat and you're a crazy cat person, then you understand. So once we got him used to a few little walks around the house and stuff like that, I was like, okay, now is the time to try this whole adventure thing and see what happens with this cat. So I booked a couple short trips to Asheville for a few nights just to take a camping trip with the dog and the cat and see how the setup in the camper, which I'll show you in a minute, was going to work for us. And it was a process, it wasn't, like I said, overnight that happened. But I found all the things that I could to try and make this little cat comfortable in this camper and see if I could still travel around the country with him. Besides harness training your cat, one of the most important other things that you need to think about is while you're traveling with your cat to get to your destination, how are you going to keep your cat? They can't ride in a trailer. That's unsafe for the animals. So they have to be in the cabin with you typically while you travel. So one thing I did when we first started, which Rupert's going to run away, he's not going to want to be around this, is I was hell bent on making sure that we were going to be safe because having a cat in the car running loose is no joke. It's not safe. And when we first started this trip, he was in the crate for the first 8,000 miles. So he spent quite a bit of time in this little cat carrier. His yowls got more aggressive, and he was yelling to everybody how bad of a mommy he had and everything else. They couldn't hear him. I was the only one that could hear him. He was driving me absolutely insane. It didn't start out that way. So then I felt like a terrible mom for making the decision to bring him on this long trip around the country, and he's not happy. The only solution I could think of is, well, I guess we have to try him outside of the crate. And we did. And to be honest with you, it went pretty well. The first trip that we had with him outside of the crate was about 15 minutes. So it wasn't a long trip, 15 to 20 minutes to get from one destination to the other because I was staying in the same area. And it worked out well. We had to establish some rules. There was a few times I was kind of distracted and I was like, this is not going to be safe. I can't do this. And then we started to establish rules. He's also a smart cat. I need to include that. He's not one of those cats that are, he's into mischief, don't get me wrong, because he is a cat, but he is one of those that is pretty respectful and he tries to make his mom happy. After the third trip on the 101, I was pretty nervous about having him out. We had gotten to Oregon and I was leaving Beverly Beach in Oregon on that stretch of the 101 that goes up the Oregon coast. And little man gets in my lap and I'm like, okay, this is this is how people get hurt, driving. This is why he's not supposed to be out of the crate. And my fear is that he's going to go down by my feet by the gas pedal or by the brake, and you're going to have to hurt your cat or hurt yourself trying to avoid when they get down in that space. And I didn't want him up on my dashboard to, take away from my line of sight and be that type of distraction. The child lock does not work on the driver's side window. Sometimes I forget to put the child lock on while we're driving, and that's a big concern of mine. So I triple check that every time I get in the car now with him loose to make sure that he's safe. I'm like, okay, so I've got one hand on him to make sure he doesn't go down by my feet and one hand on the steering wheel. While he is up looking out, he rolls down the driver's side window. And now I'm like, crap, this is how it ends, right? This is everything that I was concerned about. This is the Darwinian award list. I'm there. Okay, let my cat out in the car. And he rolls down the window, and it's such a curvy road that I can't get to a straightaway to put my knee where it needs to go to steady the wheel and roll the window up to take my hand off of the wheel. So I've got one hand on the cat, one hand on the wheel. We made it somehow by the grace of God. And that is just not a story that I want to repeat. And since then, we have been very good. Charlie rides behind me in the passenger seat along the back, and then Rupert is kind of free to roam. And he does stay out of my way and he does not get up on the dash. And we've established rules. And I tell him he's a good boy whenever he comes to visit me, sits on my lap, and then goes back. And so he's kind of made the connection. Like I said, he's a smart cat, but he'll go lay on Charlie's bed that's laid across the cooler while we're traveling in the back, and he usually just sleeps back there now, and it's become a very happy environment for us. But if you're first starting with traveling with your cat, I highly recommend putting them in a crate or something to keep you safe while you're traveling.
This is what we typically look like driving down the road with Rupert on the very back on the cooler on Charlie's bed, and then Charlie sitting in the back passenger seat. I wouldn't recommend starting out this way though.
Another thing that we've kind of outgrown this, but when I was a new cat mom, I decided to go all out and be Rupert even has his own room at my house. Okay. Like my guest room is the cat room when I don't have people visiting. So, but we've outgrown some of this stuff. So this used to be something that I used to take him around the neighborhood in when I was in Nashville and trying to get him acclimated to this life. And having, just a pack if I wasn't going to use the crate because this can expand and it can actually be like a little cat carrier as well. So any of the products that I'm showing you, I'll link below in the description. But this was very helpful for us at the beginning with the training that we were doing. So this was a lot of fun. Got a lot of giggles from people when you see a cat in one of these little cat carriers. So moving on to creating a space for your cat. And I think creating a space for Rupert was extremely important. So he's got his own cat bed. He's got, just a nice little soft plush blanket for him to hang out on. He's got a scratch post, another scratch post. This one even comes out and goes in his little catio when he's in the catio. So I'll show you his catio here in just a second. We've got toys. I've got stuff to play with him, to give him his own space. He's got little nail clippers. He lets me clip his nails. He's a good cat, like I said. He's even got a third little scratch post down here for him. So he's got 3 scratching pads and a post in this little tiny camper. And I created this space just for him so he could have his sunny spot by the window. I could keep the food away from Charlie, and he could just have his little secure space up here.
Rupert also has a filtered water system for in the camper, and I can actually plug it in and recharge it. And it lasts for about 2 to 3 weeks before I have to give it a good little charge on it. But he loves his filtered water. It's been really beneficial to have that while we've been traveling. Since I don't have a heater in the camper, I found this USB blanket that I can actually run off of my solar, and I'll put the link below if you guys are interested. But you can put it on a timer if you want. You can leave it on all night. It's pretty great. It keeps him nice and warm and toasty on those cold nights. I did discover on the way out last year for Thanksgiving to spend that time with my family, it was about 25 degrees one night, and I just put this little blanket underneath his pineapple. But I woke up to poor Rupert freezing and shivering, and he didn't like his pineapple bed yet, and he didn't snuggle with me because I think he was a little nervous when we first started the trip. So when I got to my parents' house, the first thing I did was find a solution to keep him warm for those cold nights if he didn't want to snuggle with me. So he's got his own heating blanket. I have mine. It keeps us pretty warm in this little camper at night to have something like that.
And then I have his cat litter box down here with the opening facing the opposite direction of where my dog could access it. And cat litter is so important in a setup like this, because if you don't have the right cat litter, you will know you have a cat and it will be uncomfortable and it just smells. So getting the correct cat litter and finding what works for you. Dr. Elsie's has been amazing when it comes to the right cat litter to have while you travel. Also, with the cat litter, I have to talk about this because one of my friends brought it up when I was talking to her about traveling with the cat. She said, "Can you please tell everyone to make sure that they do not leave cat litter and dump it at the campsites?" Because a lot of this is dispersed camping and you don't have access to trash, right? So you have to pack it in and pack it out. And a lot of people just dump their cat litter. That is not right. That is bad for the environment. And this is scoopable cat litter. So every time I get ready to move, I pop the top, I scoop the litter, I put it in my trash can, I seal the trash can, I bring it to the dump wherever I'm going when I leave the campsite. So that is the proper way to take care of your pets while you are out on the road, and that is something that you should take into consideration while you travel.
Now Rupert requires daily walks, so we have to take him out for his normal, usual dust bath, which I think he's part chinchilla. He goes straight for a little dirt spot, and he just rolls and takes his dust bath. He's a very strange cat. Something that I did a lot for Rupert while we were on the road as well was I have this 25-foot cable lead that I've been using, and I just tie it to the water bin because he can't pull that. So it's too heavy for him to pull even when it's halfway full. But anyway, so that works better for me than like one of those little screws that you screw into the ground to hold them in place. And that gives him 50 feet of space to run around. So when we start playing, he gets a little bit more exercise. I just use my water jugs, give him a long lead, let him be a cat. He's so funny. This little thing was one of the best inventions that I could have ever gotten to travel the country with this cat. When we first started, he was in this quite a bit, but as we progressed, he got on his leash more and more. But as you can see, I've got a little scratch pad that I just threw in there for him. He's got full view of everything around him. And this was how we started camping. It's not how it ended, but he's mostly on his harness now. But on some days where I don't want to give him my undivided attention and I don't want to worry about him, I can just throw him in here, like if I'm making coffee in the morning and I can't keep an eye on him 100%. This is a good little thing to keep him in because he cannot get out of it. We even had an incident where a garbage truck came by and he was bouncing off every direction of this tent. And I don't have any tears in the mesh because it's very strong material. So I'll also link that at the bottom if you're interested in the description. He is a bougie, spoiled cat. I'm not gonna lie. Clearly, he runs the household in the camper. And yeah, I'm just so lucky to have two animals that get along so great too. And they'll even try and play. And the really cool thing about this is it fits and it's compact into this little tote right here. So it's not like it's taking up too much room in the camper or in the car, depending on where you store it. So it's a nice little compact thing that just folds down, and it's great to have while you travel. It's probably one of my favorite things and one of his favorite things because I even set it up for him in Nashville. So if y'all are struggling with the idea of traveling with your cat, I just wanted to give you a little bit of confidence because when I was in the same boat, like how am I going to take my little turd with me everywhere I want to go? One of my neighbor had somebody camping on her property. It was like a hip camp or whatever, Boondockers Welcome. And I saw this guy with this cat on a leash, and I was like, how do you do that? Because I've got to learn, because I have this little guy. And he said, you just basically have to do it, and you have to start training them, and they'll be fine on a harness and a leash. And he lived out of his car. So I have this whole space in my camper designated for the cat, but you can also do this in a car. There's tons of people that live out of their cars with their cats and their dogs and everything else. It is possible, but hopefully these little tips and tricks will help you out if it's something that you're thinking about doing.
All right, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with Rupert and I today. He really appreciates it. And hopefully, this gave you a lot of good tips and tricks on how to travel with a cat and how to make it easy for yourself. And just taking the time with the harness training and, all the little things. Give your cat all of the little things to make them comfortable, and you too could have a successful trip with your cat. But if you liked what you saw, please feel free to like and subscribe below. And then also, if you liked any of the products that I showed you, please feel free to check out the product link in the description. So hope to see y'all down the road, and you guys have a great rest of your day.